push to the next meeting.
I move to approve the agenda as revised.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Is there anybody from the public like to speak to something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none. Old business, location of substation. Jeff, you have some more information to present?
Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. After last 2 weeks ago's council meeting, you asked that staff go back and research what it would take to move the proposed sub-site to the west, basically a block. So we gathered everybody around last Wednesday. We had Rob Mitchell from Wright Boring. We had Mike Schmatter from Mid-State Schemier, and he's in the audience today, so we can ask him questions. He's our general and electrical engineer. We had Chris Croucher return to town to give us some ideas on hooking up some of the transmission lines and the routes that it would take. Met with them and came up with a estimate on the cost on the additions to moving it to that site. Also, Glenn contacted Cody and talked to him about the piece of the property. It would be the west portion of his property, the furthest west portion. So a little bit of that is in the floodplain, but not a lot of it. It would take some building up to get that above the floodplain site. So Mike came back with several things. It's in your council packet. I can let him maybe go through it if you'd like, but basically he's saying the additional cost to our already proposed site would be an additional $224 plus the cost of the property. In that, he deducted, you'll see on one of the lines it says a deduction of $75,000. It's less 1,250 feet of overhead, 34.5. How that came about is with the sub being between second and third, the tie line that was going to be coming up first from High Street would move over to 3rd Street. So it would cut down on the length of that 34.5 tie and also the tie going from sub to sub. So that's where your $75,000 deduction is in that. One of the things that does is we would have to clear up 3rd Street considerably with trees. It's pretty heavily treed through there, so part of this estimate is tree trimming. Pat had Trenaries come and they bid the tree trimming on 3rd Street, and then on the easement from 3rd Street to the west one block, and the easement from 3rd Street east to the site, and then also the trees on the site. That bid was $33,000 to do all that. One thing to note is it would also require 2 trees to be removed in that corner that are owned privately. One is owned by the mobile home park. The other is owned by the property to the south of that corner. Those would have to come down because they'd be in the fall zone of the actual substation. So really that's all I have. Like I said, Mike's here, and I think he'd be happy to answer any questions of how he got to these numbers and go from there.
I do have questions, probably, Mike, this will be for you.
Absolutely.
So can you run down how we gain, or how it costs us over $200,000 more for a block difference? Can you run through that?
Yes, that's certainly
or
can.
for that specific portion?
So with the original sub-site, the plan is to bring the transmission underground from First Street into the sub. And then we would come underground out just to the street and then overhead from there. Which the vast majority of it's a 12 kV underground leaving the sub, of the cost difference. When we moved it west, we needed to get out of that site to both the Second Street and Third Street, and there's a lot more underground. The vast majority of that's just copper wire getting underground.
So would we not go same premise and go underground from the sub site to the street and overhead from there, from this site? I guess why would there be?
On the original site, we would go underground to the south. I'm not sure the name of that street running east and west there.
Chapel.
Chapel, yeah.
So it's 50 to 100 feet from the sub to that street, whereas when we're in the middle of the block, it's a couple hundred feet to the street, times 8 circuits, times 3 wires per circuit.
Plus boring and plus conduit.
Yeah, and there's, the trenching, the conduit, and the labor to put it in, and then there's usually be flowable fill put on top of the conduit so that if somebody's digging in the future, they don't dig into the wire, because it's a pretty big investment.
That's on board, right?
We were talking open trenching and all that.
Open direction?
Yep.
Including through the creek.
I'm sorry?
Including through the creek.
And then across Third Street. I just literally made a spreadsheet of how much conduit cable it would take to do the existing sub and how much conduit cable it would take to do the new site, and literally it's just a difference.
Okay. I just didn't, that was quite a number to.
It's a pretty big number,
to,
yes.
you know, when you're just shifting a block.
And no bias whatsoever, and there is some money in there for leveling the site, because there's about a 3-foot drop from the southeast corner to the northwest corner of that, as you get towards the creek. But that's a small part of the number. The biggest part of it is the copper wire. When we go overhead, we go to aluminum, and it's cheaper than the wire underground.
So let me ask you this then, is there any other site that is the same price as what this site is that was proposed?
I don't know that I can answer that. I haven't looked at any other sites here in town.
I didn't know if you saw their original list. We were looking at different sites.
I've just seen the original site that they cleared, and then this site here.
Casey, when we were talking about this at the meeting last Tuesday, I run some figures on it. And it come up to be $318,800. That's about the other way, I think, was about 200,000 less than going the way you're talking about because of all the boring. And then there's all the inlaying of the casing, or the conduit, and the work to get it done, to get it in there. And that's not covering the rock clause. You know, there's no rock clauses in the contract, as I understand it. If you hit rock, and it's gonna cost more. So it was about 200,000 difference. Close to, somewhere is thereabouts. More money.
You guys have any more questions for these guys? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tamara, you had something that Julie wanted read, I believe, gonna be here.
Yes, since she was gonna be gone, she would like to have her thoughts presented and entered into the minutes. So she has 3 points that she wants to make. One is urgency. The substation has been a topic of discussion for 15 years. Finally got it designed and bonded to move forward. Since the current substation transformer is at its peak performance, it is imperative for the new substation to be installed without delay. Moving the substation to a new location presents a problem with moving forward. The proposed new site requires trimming and removing trees, leveling the site, rerouting the lines, putting up overhead and underground lines, among other things that would require extra time and cost. The concrete pad needs to be done before winter, so it will be ready when the substation is delivered sometime in February. If the delivery is delayed, it will cost to have the substation stored. The need for the new substation is imminent, and further delay is definitely counterproductive. Second is price. The money we have bonded is already dedicated to the current location. Moving the location would add unneeded expenses noted in the list of things that will need to be done to the new property, plus the $100,000 to purchase the new property. The city already owns the property that the substation is slated to occupy. One last note on price. Where will this extra money come from? Number 3, voted on. The location was voted on March 7th, 2023, passed by vote 4-0. The concern of it being an eyesore at the current location was addressed in the designing phase. Consequently, a decorative wall was added to the plans. The council discussed the locations for a long time before deciding. I believe that the new location in question was at that time for sale. Why was it not considered then, and why now? Julie.
Council discussion? I mean, I'll say what my hesitancy is on it, is that you're taking up a prime 56 highway lot for the next 50 years that could be generating both property and sales tax, if it's sold. And I know that's an if, but that is what we're deciding, this lot, so that has to be a consideration and discussed.
If you look at the property that we already own, where the old motel was at, and you look at where the easement goes to the highway, there's really not much room in there to build anything like a business or whatever you may be considering doing without moving the trailers out there.
Actually,
You
we
can't
had
get
Ed,
back that far.
we had Ed, when he was still here, draw up a concept when we purchased that property. It showed a 5,000 square foot building could fit on that, the east side of that lot.
Goes back there pretty far.
I'm just stating what we saw when we purchased it, because that was one thing I wanted to know, is what could fit back in there.
Yeah, I remember I originally had the same thought you did, Jerry, that it was too small. But I remember those plans from Ed, he was in there, and I was surprised it could actually fit on there. And I do agree, Casey, that, you know, we do have only a finite amount of space for frontage highway, and, you know, it could be a missed opportunity for property tax and potentially retail sales tax. So I think that's something to be considered, especially when you're looking at long-term substation. Something's gonna be there a very long time.
Forever, I mean, this is a big impact.
Right, this will have an impact for many years.
Jerry, I'm not saying that this isn't going to be the location.
I'm sorry?
I'm not saying this isn't going to be the location, I'm just saying I think it definitely warranted, one, getting the information, so we had the facts from that lot, and just discussing it.
Well, I don't remember that it was sale at the time we made our decision in March of
I don't
23. And why wasn't that other piece of land even considered at that time?
I remember what, if I remember right, we were in tandem in discussions with the owner of the property to the south. And it was kind of understood that if that were to be acquired, I remember when we first talked about that substation going in there, it was tucked in almost behind the auto shop. Because it was hypothetical in which that other property had been acquired. Because she, at the time, I believe, was wanting to sell. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I remember we were considering the property that we already had in addition to the one that was being considered for purchase. And I think that was when our eyes kind of lit up and said, wow, we could, if that's all one property that the city owns, or two properties, however you want to do it, you wouldn't be able to see it. And I think that's when we ran the numbers and said it would fit well there. And then it got bonded, and then the acquisition of that property never happened for whatever reason, I think. Price, yeah.
Looking at what I see here with Miss Kaufman, she owns the trailer park, is that right?
I don't know her name, Glenwood.
Yeah, that's correct.
That property is evidently for sale. And moving it in behind the head body shop would work real good if we had that property. And that also would add on to what your idea is of development for where the old motel was at. If we moved it back to that property, then you got if the trailers were out of there, then you'd have all that back there that you can develop, and you could probably get larger art stores or whatever, you know, in there, as opposed to this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I think the issue is if we put the substation where it is, that's no longer a possibility. Right, so,
But, yes, that's correct. But if we bought the trailer park, moved it back behind, then it's out of the way, it's not there. It would be kind of in behind Ed's garage.
right, if I remember right,
What was the sale price?
so remember the conversation was, it was very aggressive sales price, and we weren't keen on having us be the ones moving
Right.
trailer park out of town.
But the,
So, I mean, if the owner does it, that's up to the owner, but I didn't really want to be a part of facilitating that, you know, as a city to make it happen, if I remember our conversation.
I understand what you're saying.
That was definitely a factor.
If it were an option,
Yeah.
it would be $100,000 less than buying the property that we've been discussing that belongs to where the trees and stuff, they just marked whoever owns that.
No, I agree. And that was our number one option, from what I remember.
It wouldn't be 100,000, I mean, it depends on what she's asking for, but we wouldn't have these numbers if it were moved to just to the south of the original site.
Yeah, that'd be less.
Yeah, so it might be significantly less. But,
I think Jared's saying with what she's asking versus what this property is asking for, that variation.
It also saves, on construction because it's in a better location to put the lines in.
that's what I was saying, that you wouldn't have these
Yeah.
numbers
Yeah.
because you're not crossing the street and going the extra distance. But,
Ask a question, Jeff, did you find out if the schedule for delivery is still on for February?
As far as I know.
They didn't move it? Okay.
I've asked for that and haven't got it, so.
So we don't know yet.
We don't know yet if it's,
And Mike has asked for it too last week, so.
okay. I think just where my head's at is ideally, I'd like to keep, you know, that frontage property available for something. And, you know, if we think we could get what we paid for out of it in the future, we paid $245 for it, I believe.
225 out of the city, we got.
Oh, 225, okay. Plus the donation, right. So, you know, we would get our money back at some point on that with a potentially property tax, sales tax generating,
Right.
which is gonna continue to pay for the rest of the existence.
But if we moved in, I'm
So
sorry.
let me finish. And Julie brought up some good points. The problem is we'd have to come up with an incremental, you know, $320,000 somewhere out of the budget to be able to do this.
Right.
And that, to me, is probably the biggest issue. You know, and just thinking through that, you know, the only thing I can think of, you know, we've got assets that we're not using that are more valuable than that number, I believe, and that's the city lake. I mean, you know, to me, you know, that's a trade of that asset for this, plus some that would go in the economic development fund for things just like this. If you had that money sitting, you know, where you could use it, you can make these decisions and then fill it back, right, through bond or whatever. So, I mean, I think that's our only hope. I'm sure we probably couldn't turn that around to make it a timing where one would happen before the other. But, you know, if we felt we could do that within the same year, you know, you can use, you know, your reserve funds could cover you, you know, for the hit and get filled back. So I mean, that's really the only way in my mind I can think of that we can make this work in the budget. And there's probably others, but that's one thing I can.
And so where are you putting it then?
I'd say we're putting it in the the lot we just discussed, it would be at $324,000 to make that happen, what they presented today. And that would leave us with that lot that we would then sell at some point, get our money back plus for a business that's gonna generate revenue and property tax and all that.
But also, on the same hand, if you look at the move from where we have it up there now, in behind what would be Ed's shop, then you have also increased the value of that property because you moved all those trailers out of there, and now you've got a bigger foothold for other businesses to come in with an access.
But who's gonna move those trailers out of there? That's the
Yeah, that's
issue.
the problem. It's
The owners, I suppose.
Probably
Do
not.
you even know if it's still for sale?
Why would
I don't
they?
know.
We
I
haven't,
mean,
we haven't talked
I've
about it.
never even seen I mean, is that just something that we approach and of course, yeah, everything's for sale for the right price?
Well, she did put a price on it to Glenn.
Yeah, she did. I don't think we should really discuss that in open session.
No, I'm just
Right.
saying,
I don't think so
if
either.
you
Yeah,
approach
no,
me
it's-
and say, is your house for sale? I go, yeah, here's the number, and I'd be willing to move if you paid me. So I just don't know Jerry for far enough along to even, again, we're gonna have to go take the time to go down that path, again. And I'm not opposed to that, but it's gonna delay this decision further.
I do have a gut feeling, Jerry, that we would be making a mistake by putting this on that lot. I really do. Because I think it takes up, I mean, you look down 56 Highway, there's 2 empty lots on 56 Highway. This one and the one by Quick Shop. One by Quick Shop's owned by a private entity. So even if we had a business approach us at some point, which we've talked to a couple, talked to a medical professionals business that didn't end up on the lot, and then we tried to get McDonald's over there, closer to campus.
There's a person that owns this property that we're talking about, does he want to sell?
Glenn spoke to him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm hesitant to speak about it without anything in front of us. Just, I mean, you're talking about people's existing homes, and we have no low-income affordable housing
Yeah.
as it is.
I think we got a viable option
I-
here.
I don't
If
even
we
wanna
could-
touch that.
If we could find a way to, because I think it's an investment that would pay itself back.
Mhm.
That extra 325K, I'm certain at some point we're gonna sell that lot for at least 225, what we paid for it, if not more. And then, you know, we can do the math on whatever goes in there on property tax and loan and see when the payback period should be. So I'm comfortable at some point, I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, that after that, it would be a financially beneficial situation for the city.
No, there's nothing listed in here about tree removal, how much is that's gonna cost?
It's 33,000, it's on that list.
It's on the back
That's
page.
part of the,
And, you know, I think we use existing assets. You know, we're not bonding anything, we're leveraging what we own and not currently using very well, to do things like this. That kind of throws another whole wrench in the whole conversation. But I'm open for suggestions on any other way to do it. If not, I don't see, any way. I think we gotta move forward with what's been approved already.
Don't we still own a lot on the highway in between here and and Third Street there?
Well, that little sliver where people used to dump their Christmas trees,
How about that?
well, we don't own the whole thing.
We don't know it?
We only own like literally a sliver of it. And then when, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Is that one?
It's this little triangle.
No, it's not what I'm talking about. Go further down, on the south end of the highway, on the south side of the highway.
No,
There was
we
a-
sold that.
We sold it.
The one next to the old train
Yeah.
office?
Yeah.
Delbert bought that.
He's cleaning that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cleaned
there's
out
that.
the creek.
Now, does he didn't have an entrance to that from the highway, did he?
I think it's a shared entrance with that,
With that gun shop?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a shared entrance.
I understand people want to rush into these things, but if you do have a window and it does deserve more thought, I don't see the harm in thinking about it more.
Maybe we can get Jeff back up here and talk about
Let's talk about timeline.
the window. You know, what happens, you know, can you pour in the winter? You know,
What was the question again?
so we're really trying to, you know, it's this deadline of having the pad done before winter to be available sometime in February. So, two things, you know, is it not feasible to potentially delay the pad into the winter and do it in the wintertime? And then how much of an impact would it have if we delay, if we can't pour it until, you know, February, we have to wait till March,
What's the cost of storage?
April or May, yeah, what's the storage cost on it?
So I looked into the contract, I got a copy of it here, to try to answer, because I figured that question may come up today. Let me get back to it here. So, it's talking about the field service prices, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, what they would charge to have a representative come help install, is that correct?
Yeah, the transformer comes without fins and bushings, and they dress it out and test it once it's sitting on the pad.
So by contract, it says, for any units that are placed in storage, field service charges will be increased by 10% every 6 months or part thereof. Virginia Transformer will not store transformers. Storage of transformer may be for a limited period of time based on space availability. If explicitly agreed upon by Virginia, period, if quoted, space storage charges will be provided. Any unit placed in storage must be paid for in full within 30 days of completion of the transformer. Acceptance will be deemed to have occurred upon placement in storage, and transfer of title will take along with all associated milestone payments. Any additional testing requested at the time of shipment will be charged separately. We will require at least 60 days notice prior to requested shipment date to remove a transformer from storage. So it's not really
Yeah.
It's not defined.
So what's the
defined
field-
on what the
what's
actual.
field engineer cost? I mean, that one was 10% for 6 months.
Do you have any idea what that portion would be?
I mean, that's gotta be a part of the bid, right?
It is in the bid, I don't have it with me,
You don't, okay, is it $1 million, is it 100,000?
it's not really. I want to say that's in the $30,000-$40,000 range.
Okay.
That's 3,000.
$3,000 or $4,000 for another 6 months.
So, and my question is, can we not store it here?
Yes,
Good.
I think we probably could. It would require, once we need to move it, it would require a crane and a truck again.
Yeah.
So probably, I'm guessing 10 grand to move it to its permanent location. That-
It'll be 5 to 10 grand. Unfortunately, I've had to do that before.
How long does it take this concrete to cure
28 days was
8
minimum,
days.
before you do anything with it?
before you'd want to set it on there, yes.
And you can pour in the winter.
You
Above
probably
a certain
could.
temperature. Costs are gonna go up.
You
It's
can
a-
put blankets and stuff over it.
Well, I mean, it's probably a different formula,
It is.
It's hot water treated.
hot water treated.
It's a little more work, but it's not impossible.
Okay. Quality's the same when you finish product.
What is it, potassium chloride they put in it?
I mean, we're,
I'm not sure.
What is-
so really, we need to have a 30-day cure done by the
February?
by January, end of January. And that's assuming this will be the first company that hits the proposed delivery schedule in the last 20 years.
Since we've done any RFPs.
Yeah, it's always delay, delay, delay. And now we're like, we could use a delay maybe. And so it'd be nice to know as soon as you find out what their confidence level of hitting that
Okay.
date. Because we're really talking, we take some time to make the decision, we're not necessarily backing that up at all. If we can still pour in the winter and get it done in time. I'm not proposing we move that back unless we have to because we're not gonna deliver it. But I think we have some time to, if we do this every meeting until we come to a decision one way or the other. Because I do think if we're talking alternative funding revenue streams, then we have to bring up, where's that? If we're talking about the city lake, that's gonna bring a whole nother dynamic into it,
Yeah.
whole nother
Yeah. There's a lot
angle.
to
But,
this.
so it's not something I think we can do in 2 meetings.
I agree. So,
Yeah, this is gonna be a few meetings for sure.
but I think, coming up with a next step is a big, thing if we're gonna delay it at
Yeah.
all. And I would suggest the first thing we gotta do is first of all, determine on a map what section of town that needs to go in based on growth, based on ease of transmission lines, et cetera. And I know we've already done this once, but I think for me, the impact for me, the change in my own, the change in the conversation from the property acquisition, et cetera, plus seeing that footprint and how big that dang thing was on that lot, really startled me. And I had, so if people are wondering why the change? Well, that's why. For me anyway, I can speak.
That
But
was for me as well.
I think finding out what we already own within whatever zone we determine would be beneficial for a new substation. And then my big question is, it was brought up before, the water tower. Then the lot that the water tower sits on, not the lot, the property the water tower sits on. West
I looked in
Town.
the GIS.
Who owns
doesn't-
that?
The GIS doesn't show we own it, so,
So does it say who owns it or it just says we don't?
well, I think it shows that the school district does.
So we lease it?
It belongs
Yeah,
to
it was
who,
built
Jason?
way before I
It
was,
belongs to who?
school district.
School district.
Where the water tower sits out here?
The GIS doesn't show that the city owns it. Scott's got it pulled up.
It's slow.
I mean, that's just one property that I
But
look at.
we've run those numbers, right? I think you've run, wasn't there one of the options, I think 4 options, it was?
There was 3 options.
Wasn't one of them out that way?
One of them was across the road from the vet clinic
Right, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to the
So
north.
What was the problem with that one?
I can imagine the
Transmission?
transmission costs,
Transmission costs, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think that, yeah.
if we're talking about going 1 block, you see what happened.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing
So-
you're trying to tie into a certain size, 12.47.
The transmission, it ties at 6th and Orange.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so it all comes
to
up
get
from
that
there.
clear out to north of the vet clinic was 2 miles.
So it's not as bad as I thought. It's not like it's coming down, so we didn't, is there not a second feed proposed coming down the highway? I
No.
guess it's at Orange Street, right? All the way out to.
6th and Orange is our tie.
Okay. But it comes down Orange Street all the way out to 56?
Our tie, me going on Casey Peniel, or
Yeah, yeah.
Evergy,
yeah.
it goes east from 6th and Orange.
And hits 56?
And hits 56,
And all the way down
yes.
to, okay.
But in order to have it tied anywhere but that intersection, Evergy would have to do a lot more in their infrastructure because that's the center of their 2 feeds. So if we move it on the other side of the switch that they already have installed to dictate which feed we're getting, then that means there's more involved in
So
that.
they're coming in there, and we go to this next one from there, wherever we decide. Right, so we're coming up from there to,
The
the
existing
current
plan
site.
is the 3rd Street
right,
to High, to First, to
So
56.
so from 6th and Orange, how does the transmission get to the current substation? Is it overhead or underground?
Overhead. It goes to Newton and then to the 7th Street and down in the ground.
And so with the current plan that we've already approved.
I'm sorry, overhead on that.
Yeah, no, I get you. So with the current plan that we've already approved, would it be overhead as well, going all the way to?
The current plan we had approved would be overhead to First and 56.
Uh-huh.
It would drop in the ground there and run underground to the subsite.
And so there's no way to drop down overhead to the proposed property instead of going underground from the current?
No, that change was gonna go up 3rd Street It would go up Third Street overhead,
Uh-huh.
would drop down at that alley easement,
Yeah,
and then move east underground to the subside. And that area was what, and on top of that was all the transmission, the 9 other transmission feeds had to go out of there too, and they had to go a lot further distance underground than what the original site has. Because the original site has those 9 feeds going in the ground at the substation, jumping the chapel and going in the air. So we're talking 50 feet versus, what do you measure, 300
Yeah, it's a couple hundred feet.
per feeder?
So, Jeff, what if it was over by 56 and High Street intersection? What would that do? Would that do anything?
What was there?
The substation at that intersection?
It would probably be similar distance in 34.5 in the high voltage, but it would be longer distance in all of the feeders. And I don't think we have easement to run that highway. That's Evergy easement. So to get it on our easement, you basically have to come down high and hit First Street.
I see where your head's at. Bigger lot, you get more frontage space for commercial, I get it.
Scott, to pick up the difference in cost for the $334,000, when you're talking about the lake, are you talking about selling the lake, or are you, is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah.
How many acres is out there, do you know?
60?
50 or 60?
Does that count the
Is that-
whole east side of the hill to the, where
Is
the
that
wells used to be?
something- Is that something you
Where the courses?
really want to do?
We're getting no value out of it.
Yeah, it's,
But we don't attempt to get it either.
Well, I'm attempting to right now.
if we attempt to get value out of it, it's gonna require a large investment on our part.
How far is it from the lake to that feed at 6th and Orange? If we already own the lake versus 6th and Orange all the way to the highway?
But you gotta go from that.
3.5 miles.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But then you gotta get the 34.5 out to it and then get all your distribution back. So 9 feet.
It's gotta go to
Yeah.
the current substation, and then you can take it back.
You have to go out and
You
back.
can't intercept it there.
You're adding 30 miles between 10 feet.
Maybe like, we need to dig back up those 3 site analysis. We need to go back and look at those. I mean, because if you look at the map, as the crow flies, it is not a lot longer to go out to the water tower site than it is to where
I
we're.
thought the concern with the water tower site was coming off the Ottawa feeder instead of the Gardner feeder, because the Gardner feeder was stronger to us than the Ottawa feeder is.
They both come in there, don't they?
Well, like I said, the tie point, regardless of where we put the sub, has to be 6th and Orange. So that's either or.
But I thought we had to build up more on the Ottawa side if we came out.
It would be,
west.
but you'd be backfeeding it.
What does that mean?
So you'd have to go from 6th and Orange back to the road to the south, and I'm sorry, I don't know what road that is,
Yeah,
and run a mile to the west, and then go back to the north to that side.
I think,
Either that or stretch it straight east, or straight west from 6th and Orange through the trees,
yeah.
hit Orange on the other side of 8th.
And then you hit the golf course.
right. I think, I remember the conversation was that having another substation at the highway or north of the highway was beneficial, like, just in case down the road, say 20 years from now, we did get that north feed and it could tie in there. We could
Oh,
have
right.
2 Ottawa feed and the north feed as well, or the east feed. Am I remembering that
So
right?
you want the substation where you want your building to be.
Correct.
Because otherwise you're going to be running more lines
Correct.
from the other end of town to
Right.
the new.
So that would be the other problem with the
Yeah.
west side, is because we don't own the electric rights across the street.
That's correct. And that was one of the things we talked about.
That's a risk.
Where on the east side, we already have development going on that we own the electric rights to.
Yeah.
Good point.
I don't know, the urgency's factors dissipating for me, knowing that, I think we have time to talk about this more. I think we should.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, what do we, let's, to your point,
We
let's
need a
have some
plan.
concrete
Yeah,
next
right.
steps to help make this decision.
I think you're right, re-identify those 3 properties, go back and look at those again.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, who can we put on it? Who knows what the city owns, and go and see. I mean, surely we have to have some land assets north of the highway. I can think of one already, I think.
Maybe we have some waste ground. We have some waste ground up by Signal Ridge, but I think that's a floodway. Behind that fire station, the city owns all that. You could always talk to the Catholic Church about behind their place.
We could talk to a lot of
How much,
people.
how much land they got behind there, do you know?
The Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't, Jerry. There's quite a bit though. They have a pretty big lot.
Is there another access, is there a back access to it?
I don't know if the Catholic Church does have a back access to it. I don't think so, because I think they have a fence in between the soccer fields, the little kid soccer fields, and the back of the Catholic Church. I don't think there's a road.
Soccer field is right behind there, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right about right there. Well, I mean,
Next step. we
well,
need-
do you want to, I mean, is there, you want to toss it to committee, and have committees kind of look at maybe possible locations,
Work session?
revisit? Work session might be what this is.
Yeah,
I
I
think
feel like
we-
this is work session more
Bring
than.
all the information forward.
I think we probably need to set up a work session.
Yeah.
But what I'm afraid of is, I think the last time we had 3 or 4 properties that we talked about, and we kind of didn't really aggressively pursue, or maybe, it seemed like those were our only options. That's kind of how I felt, was just based on, but maybe we need to get more creative, and who would that be
Well,
destined to
the
get more
one property
creative?
that we had was planted in the floodplain that belongs to that older fellow that lives out on the dirt road. The other property was in the school district, and we decided if we took that or used that, that the school might want to develop something there
Right.
instead of us
Correct.
doing it.
Yeah.
And that is why we picked what we picked to start with.
Correct,
Yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
you're right.
But we really didn't discuss it further than that. We kind of,
I think it's worth another discussion, and, you know, we may come
It
back
doesn't
to,
cost us
you know,
anything.
we got 2 possibilities right now with pricing. We
Right.
know what it
Right.
would cost us for those 2 sites.
So before you would attempt to go ahead with the substation, would you try to sell the property first so you'd have the money on hand to do what you want?
That's open for discussion. I think that's what needs to be discussed. Is if not, where does it fit in the budget? What's that do to the reserve? Are we comfortable? I mean, all that has to be discussed.
Are we comfortable with what we have now?
I'm not,
You mean on the current site?
Why are you not, Corey?
for all the reasons we just discussed.
I'm sorry?
For all the reasons we just discussed,
I
we,
heard you, yes.
okay.
You're talking on the current site?
Yes.
I'm not, just because of the potential of lost revenue to the city in the long run.
Correct. I think when we approved it, it was, I don't remember if we had a physical site plan. I don't really remember one, but it was discussed, the square footage and the square footage of that lot. But the problem is, when you talk about that lot in square footage terms, it's a triangle. And square footage isn't necessarily buildable square footage. And I think maybe, could it go there? Would it be fine? Absolutely. Put up a concrete fence, fine. I think we made a good decision. But if we have time to think even more pragmatically about another better option and save that for a commercial,
Yeah.
do it.
I think the first thing is, no matter what we do elsewhere, there's gonna be cost, incremental cost.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I think this site here probably is gonna be the lowest incremental cost, just based on proximity to what we've already bonded, right?
Right.
I guess if we move something closer to Sixth and Orange, the cost could go down from what we're currently planning. 'Cause-
On certain feeds, and other feeds would increase.
True, so I guess we don't really know. I mean, so, I'm open to looking at other spots, but I guarantee you, we're gonna have to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it happen. So if we can't figure that out, I think need to put it where we've got currently proposed to put it.
That's fine. If we end up there, that's fine.
Right.
I know,
Yeah.
that's my thought process.
Yeah.
is
I'm
we
not
can
gonna
think
be
all day
terribly
long,
sad,
and-
it's
and
just-
You need to think about how we're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the rest of it's really a waste of time.
Right.
Well, so do you want to take this on in finance committee and talk about it on Friday?
We talk about, what we think we could get, what we think we could get price-wise for that, and maybe any other land we can come
I'd
up
like to
with.
see some other land. I'd like to have some numbers.
Can you run GIS and do Baldwin City and boom?
Can, I don't.
Somebody needs to go.
Can you click one property owner and then it highlights where all those properties are? Like, can you,
No,
like
that-
city
but you
Baldwin?
gotta
Let's
list it
click,
for you.
like, no, but you can click.
Wheel of
through.
Fortune.
Yeah,
All right.
so we're gonna have a work session. What are we gonna do? Finance committee's gonna start the conversation about assets that we could sell to pay for this.
I like the idea of a work session.
And then come back to a work session and investigate the sites and decide if, we're gonna move any further forward, we're just gonna pull the trigger and go with what we have.
When do you want your work session? Tuesday? A week?
Doesn't work for me.
Well, let's go to Tuesday after next meeting. That gives committee a little time.
Yeah, does that work?
That's
The
fine.
eighth, for, is that
And
the
we can
eighth?
still discuss it at the next meeting too,
Yeah,
hone in,
yeah,
but we can just plan on tentatively, the 8th, we'll have another work session.
Okay.
So then that'll put us on track to make a decision by the second meeting in October. Sound good?
Yep.
Committee Friday,
What day's the open house?
5th.
Fifth.
Committee Friday, we'll discuss at the October 1 meeting. Work session on the 8th, final decision on the October 15th.
theoretically.
Theoretically.
Decision.
Hopefully.
I may not be here on the 15th. I'm going to Kentucky. I don't know what you guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Any further discussion on this agenda item?
That's it.
New business wastewater department, Steve.
We had for lease purchasing a truck in our budget this year. Ben and Glenn told me to wait till August to start looking. I found a truck with Ford. It's a fleet truck. It'll be 3 months to get it. It's $53,923 total. We have $75,000 in the budget line for that. And just need to get approved to get it ordered. It is a 1-ton truck, full-size truck. It's for pulling our trailers and stuff around. When we clean sewers and camera, we gotta have 2 trucks there because we're 2 separate manholes. We gotta have one at this manhole with a machine and one at the other manhole to keep people from falling in and out. So it's something we need.
Any questions for Steve? Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public like to speak this agenda item?
You what?
No, I was asking for any comment. Not council discussion?
So we budgeted 75 and it's 53.9?
Yep.
Sounds
Love
good.
that.
Not on entertained motion.
I move to purchase the fleet vehicle for the price of $53,923 Does that include everything, is that tax and everything?
We don't pay tax.
Yeah, we don't pay taxes.
Okay, we're good, you're right.
So,
My second.
Moved and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next, council committee reports, budget and finance, Scott.
We did meet, and obviously the substation incremental cost budget impact was discussed before we really even knew what the total amount of the cost would be. So we were just trying to see if there was room, and not a lot of room. So that was discussed. Sounds like we're gonna discuss it again. We looked at July and year-to-date financials. You know, no real significant negative issues. Sales tax trend still is below last year. But I would like to have Ben present to the council after September. You know, and I'll talk to him on Friday after September. Numbers are final, so we'd have like a three-quarter, you know, review of 2024, so we can see what we're doing and kind of get us a feel for what 2025 may look like. So we went through that. Then we started the process of looking at the 2025 electric utility rates based on our budget, you know, what we budgeted and what our expected revenue is going to be. Still working on the numbers. We didn't get really very far along. Some of the things we did discuss. And if you guys have any input or feedback, all ears. But one of the things we discussed was looking at, you know, having solar customers share more of the utility infrastructure and operating costs than they currently do with the net zero policy, where they could literally pay nothing a month, right? So, you know, we still have to have all that infrastructure there because you aren't using solar 24/7. So trying to look at a different way to do that. They're paying the same $12.50 meter fee, so that's really what it is. And you can't have a different meter fee for different types of customers. So we've got to, I think the conversation is there a fairer way to have solar customers pay more of that infrastructure cost, operating cost? But you can't do it through a meter, different meter fee. So that's up for discussion. You guys have thoughts or what? You know, we're open for them. Talking about the demand meters that we have with the school district and Baker, and you know the pros and cons of having that. You know what they do for us, what they don't do, and how they operate. So that was a conversation we had. You know, do we want to keep that? You know, if we could go to a rate consolidation and say have everybody pay the same rate, right? That's the simplest form. But there's reasons to do the demand, you know, meters, and the best way to describe it is those big users are incentivized to keep their peak demand as low as possible, because that's a part of the formula of what we charge them. So you say, well, why does that matter? Well, if you remember, we have to build our infrastructure, our capacity to 15% over peak, right, for the year. So wherever that peak is, whatever that goes to, then that kind of sets where we're at. If we can keep that peak as low as possible, it keeps our capacity requirements down. So there's benefits in having large users try to control their peaks, which means turning air conditioners on, making sure they don't come on at the same time, one has to go off with it. So they do that because it impacts their bill. So right now, it looks like we need to keep that. We're proposing to keep that, but that hasn't been finalized. Then we talked about the transparency billing format, like we're doing on water. We pull the debt out, you know, we do all that. So that's the other thing we were going to look at is what would that look like once we figure out what the 2025 rate needs to be. We would look at what would that look like in the new format, since we will have a rate established. So that was discussed as well, and it's on the agenda again for Friday. That's it.
Community Development Corps.
We have not met since the last meeting. We meet Monday, 4 o'clock, second floor City Hall.
Public Safety, Susan.
We have not met. We're meeting on the 25th at 4 o'clock.
Public Works, Julie, or Jerry. You guys meet?
We met, and everything that I would go through, we've already discussed in the substation stuff, so there's nothing to say.
Strategic Planning, Scott.
Before I get into that, budget finance meeting is Friday, 7:30.
Yeah.
So second floor City Hall. We haven't met, but the employee survey is back, and we're meeting this Friday at, keep me honest, 1 o'clock. Second floor City Hall, and Ryan from ECT is going to cover the survey and then bring it to the council, I'm assuming shortly thereafter. And that's 1 o'clock this Friday, second floor City Hall.
City administrator staff comments,
Nothing further.
council comments? Oh, I
Well, I'm
know.
gonna ask, are we moving in?
Oh, yes.
Like, I mean, come
Did
on.
we get our temporary occupancy permit on the community center? Will we have it by October 1st?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We will have our next meeting at the community center.
How come we bypassing number 2 here?
Because we removed it from the agenda.
Huh?
Removed it from the agenda.
I'd like to address that. Am I able to do that?
I'd have to recuse myself probably.
No, you don't.
Okay.
I have researched this thoroughly to see if you can do what you're setting to do. And what I've discovered by going through our books, some county stuff, and through the state, that this is allowed because of the fact that when you became mayor, your occupation was for selling real estate and development. And that falls in this line. So therefore, what does any council member, any county commission member who has an occupation is able to continue that occupation, even though it may seem like that it would be a personal thing in some situations that they made. So what you're doing or what you're wanting to do is just as legal as it can be, and that's what I found out. For those who are interested in hearing it, it's a legal operation. It says so in law books.
Sure. Any other council comments? Not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Been moved to second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes, we're adjourned.